Part 1. The Unexpected Moment, extended version, approximately 1,000 words. Emily never meant to walk into something she wasn't supposed to see. That morning, she was only trying to do a small, normal thing: pick up her book from Claire's house before heading to work. The air was cool and smelled of rain, the quiet kind of morning that makes everything feel slower. She parked by the maple tree outside, humming to herself, not knowing her heart would race before the next 10 minutes were over. Claire's house had always felt like a second home to her. They'd been best friends since high school, sharing late-night talks, heartbreak stories, and plans that stretched into the future. So when Emily noticed the front door slightly open, she didn't think twice. "Claire," she called softly, stepping inside. No response. The house was quiet except for the distant sound of water running. Maybe someone was washing dishes. She thought. She moved through the hallway, her shoes brushing against the hardwood floor, her hands sliding along the wall out of habit. She turned the corner into the kitchen and stopped dead in her tracks. There, standing by the counter with a towel around his neck, was Mr. Anderson, Claire's dad. He was fresh from a morning jog, his gray t-shirt draped over a chair, headphones still hanging around his neck. He hadn't seen her yet. The sunlight from the window framed him, lighting up the small drops of sweat on his forehead. For a split second, Emily couldn't move. It wasn't about what she saw. It was the shock of it. The sudden awareness that she had walked into a private moment. She gasped and immediately turned away, words tumbling out in panic. "I'm so sorry. I thought Claire was here. I didn't mean." He turned around, startled, then broke into a kind smile. "Emily." His voice was calm, friendly, as if he understood the whole situation in an instant. "It's all right. You didn't do anything wrong." Her heart was beating so fast it almost hurt. She could barely look at him as he grabbed his shirt from the chair and pulled it on. "I didn't know anyone was here," she said quickly, still half turned toward the doorway. The door was open and I thought he waved his hand gently. It's the same easy confidence she'd seen so many times before when he used to drive them to school or fix Claire's car. "Don't worry. Claire went out early for her internship. I must have left the door open after my run." Emily nodded too fast, trying to smile but feeling the heat in her face. "Right? I'll just grab my book and go." "Sure," he said, voice calm, like nothing unusual had happened. "It's good to see you, though. Been a while since you've stopped by." She managed a small laugh, her voice soft. "Yeah, life's been busy." She hurried toward the living room, grabbed the book from the coffee table, and practically ran outside. When she reached her car, she leaned against the door, closing her eyes. The cold air hit her face, but her cheeks still felt warm. It wasn't embarrassment alone. It was something else, something she didn't want to name. The moment kept replaying in her mind his surprised smile, the easy kindness in his tone, the calmness that made the awkwardness melt a little. She'd known him for years, but in that instant, he didn't feel like just Claire's dad. He felt different. Driving away, she kept shaking her head, telling herself to stop thinking about it. It was nothing. Just an accident. She hadn't seen anything inappropriate. It was just bad timing. But the memory stuck to her like a shadow. When she got home, she tried to distract herself with her usual Saturday chores. She folded laundry, made coffee, even started cleaning the windows, something she hadn't done in months. But no matter what she did, her mind kept circling back to that one image. Mr. Anderson turning around, surprised look softening into a smile, the way he made an uncomfortable moment feel almost safe. She told herself she was being silly. He was just a kind man, older, gentle, and respectful. He'd been through a lot after his wife passed away 2 years ago. And everyone in their small town admired how he handled everything with quiet strength. Maybe that's what she noticed now, the quiet strength that she had never really seen before. That night, as Emily sat by her window with a cup of tea, she tried to make sense of the strange weight sitting in her chest. It wasn't a crush, at least she didn't think so. It was something closer to curiosity, maybe even admiration. But still, it made her uneasy. She opened her phone, scrolling through old photos with Claire, summer trips, study sessions, birthday cakes, laughter. Mr. Anderson was in a few of them, always in the background, smiling politely, never the center of attention. He'd always been that way, calm, steady, quietly dependable for the first time. She noticed how much of that steadiness she had taken for granted. Maybe it was just her imagination, she thought. Maybe she was reading too much into one small moment. But even as she told herself that, she remembered the way he had said her name. Emily. It's just her name, but gentle, almost thoughtful. She sighed and closed her eyes. It wasn't love, it wasn't attraction, it was something else. Something human. Two people caught in a moment that neither of them expected, still. She couldn't shake the feeling that something had quietly shifted between them. She didn't know what it was yet, but deep down, she sensed that the next time they met, it wouldn't feel the same as before. The next morning, Emily woke up early, but her thoughts hadn't changed. She saw Claire's name pop up on her phone, a message saying she'd be gone for a few days, visiting her college friend. Emily hesitated before replying. She didn't want to go to their house again, not yet. She needed time to clear her head, to make sure her mind didn't twist a harmless encounter into something more. But time didn't help much. The more she tried to ignore it, the more the memory replayed in sharper detail. His calm voice, the kindness in his eyes, the sunlight spilling across the room like a quiet painting. It wasn't what happened that stayed with her. It was how it felt by evening. She finally gave in and texted Claire. "Hey, can I stop by later this week? I found something that belongs to your dad, his old wrench from the garage." It was a small excuse, but part of her wanted to face him again, to erase the strange awkwardness that had settled in her chest when Claire replied with a cheerful, "Sure, he'll be home." Emily's heart skipped. She didn't know why. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was curiosity. Or maybe it was because deep down she already sensed that one brief, innocent moment had opened a door neither of them planned to walk through. She looked at her reflection in the window and whispered to herself, it was just an accident. But even as she said it, she knew that morning was no longer just a simple accident. It had become the start of something she couldn't quite explain. Something that would change the way she saw everything and everyone around her. And though Emily couldn't see it yet, life had just started writing a story she would never forget. This version maintains a mature emotional tone, fast pacing, clean language, and fully complies with YouTube monetization and content safety policies. Part 2. The distance between them, extended version, approximately 1,000 words after that awkward morning. Emily tried her best to act normal whenever she visited Claire's house. But normal wasn't as easy as it used to be. Every time she saw Mr. Anderson, something inside her shifted, not in a loud or dramatic way. Just a quiet flutter that made her heart uneasy. Weeks passed, and summer turned to fall. Claire had started her internship downtown, spending most of her time away. The house felt emptier when Emily visited, and sometimes it was just her and Mr. Anderson there. She told herself she was only being polite, checking in, dropping off things for Claire, but deep down, she knew there was more to it. Mr. Anderson was different from most people she knew. He had this calm, grounded energy, the kind that made you feel safe just standing near him. He'd lost his wife a few years ago, but he never let grief turn him bitter. Instead, he carried it like a quiet companion, moving through life with patience and kindness. Emily admired that, maybe too much. One afternoon, she stopped by to return a sweater Claire had left at her place. When she reached the porch, she saw Mr. Anderson fixing the light fixture. He was standing on a small ladder, sleeves rolled up, humming a tune from the 80s, "Need a Hand." She called out. He looked down, smiling. "Only if you're offering free labor." Emily laughed. "Depends on the pay." He stepped down, brushing dust from his hands. "How about a cup of coffee?" "Seems fair." She hesitated for a second, then nodded. "Deal." Inside, the kitchen smelled like fresh coffee and cinnamon. He poured her a mug and leaned against the counter. "Haven't seen you much lately," he said casually. "I've been busy," she replied, trying to sound casual too. "Work, errands, life stuff." He smiled softly. "Fair enough. I thought maybe you were avoiding this place." Her eyes widened a little, avoiding. Why would I? She stopped mid-sentence, realizing what he meant. Oh, you mean after that morning? He chuckled, the sound low and kind. You don't have to be embarrassed about that forever, you know. Accidents happen. She looked down at her cup, a shy smile forming. Still, it was weird. I didn't want you to think I was. He shook his head. Emily, I've known you since you were a teenager. You've always been respectful. I didn't think anything of it. His calm tone made her feel at ease. For the first time in weeks, the awkward tension between them faded. They started talking about Claire's internship, about the neighborhood, even about movies. The conversation flowed easily, almost like old friends catching up. But beneath the surface, Emily felt something gentle stirring. He wasn't just Claire's dad anymore. He was a person she genuinely enjoyed talking to, someone who listened, who noticed small things, who made her laugh without even trying. After a while, she glanced at the clock. I should probably go. Didn't mean to take up your afternoon. He smiled. You didn't. It's nice having company. That one simple sentence stayed with her the rest of the day. It's nice having company. Sounded so ordinary. Yet it felt like he meant it more deeply than he said it. From that day on, Emily started visiting more often, sometimes to drop off something for Claire, sometimes just to say hello. Each time their conversations grew a little longer, their laughter a little easier. Still, she was careful. She knew where the line was, and she had no intention of crossing it. But emotions don't always ask for permission before they grow. One chilly evening, stopped by with a pumpkin pie she had baked. Mr. Anderson opened the door, surprised. For me? For both of you, she said quickly. Well, mostly for you. Claire said she won't be home till Sunday. He smiled, a little touched. That's kind of you. Come in, you shouldn't be standing out there freezing. They sat in the living room, sharing pie and stories about small things, his old high school days, her new job at the bookstore, the funny customers she met. The house felt warm and peaceful, like time had slowed down just for them. When she got up to leave, he walked her to the door. For a brief second, their eyes met, and something quiet passed between them. Not words, not attraction, just understanding. Thanks for the pie, he said softly. Thanks for the coffee, she replied, smiling. He chuckled. Seems fair. Emily drove home that night with her heart full and confused. She wasn't falling in love, at least she didn't think so. It felt more like she was drawn to the way he made her feel, calm, seen, safe. But even so, she knew it was complicated. He was her best friend's father. There were boundaries that couldn't be ignored the next week. Claire called from the city, laughing about how her dad was finally talking more these days. Emily smiled but didn't say anything. She wondered if she had something to do with that as days passed. Emily started to notice small details she hadn't before, how he always offered her tea when she looked tired, how he remembered little things she said weeks ago, how his laugh filled the quiet house. He never flirted, never crossed any line, but there was warmth in his tone that made her heart ache. One afternoon, as she helped him fix a garden fence, she accidentally got a splinter. He gently took her hand to remove it, his touch careful and steady. You really should wear gloves, he said with a small smile. She tried to joke, and missed the chance to get free first aid from the neighborhood's most patient handyman. He laughed. You're impossible. For a moment, their eyes met again, and time seemed to stop. It wasn't romantic in the way movies show it. It was quiet, slow, full of emotions neither dared to name after that day. Emily found herself thinking about him more than she wanted to admit. She respected him deeply, but she also felt something she couldn't quite describe. Maybe admiration? Maybe something tender hidden beneath the surface. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, she walked past his house but didn't go in. She stood across the street looking at the warm light glowing through the windows. It reminded her of everything safe and steady in a world that always felt uncertain. She smiled to herself, whispering, "You're just being silly." But even as she walked away, she knew she wasn't. Something was changing slowly, quietly. Beautifully, Mister. Anderson had no idea what kind of place he had started to hold in Emily's heart. And Emily didn't yet realize that her quiet visits, her laughter, her kindness, they were beginning to heal something inside him too. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was the beginning of something real, a bond formed not by attraction, but by understanding. To lonely hearts learning, without words, how to feel seen again. And as autumn deepened, neither of them knew that the coming days would bring them closer than either ever expected. This story version keeps a mature emotional tone, moves at a natural pace, and remains 100% safe and compliant with YouTube monetization and content policies. No explicit content, no adult themes, no harmful material, just emotional storytelling. Part 3, The Unspoken Truth Extended Version, approximately 1,000 words. Autumn had turned the town golden, the air crisp and full of the scent of falling leaves. Emily walked down the familiar street toward the Anderson house, holding a small basket of muffins she had baked that morning. It had been months since that first awkward morning, and yet her connection with Mr. Anderson had quietly grown into something warm and steady, something she didn't fully understand, but didn't want to lose either. Claire was still away most days for her internship, and that left Mr. Anderson spending a lot of time alone. Emily told herself she visited out of kindness, but deep down she knew there was more to it. She liked being there, the soft music playing from his old radio, the calm energy of the house, and the peaceful way conversations with him always felt easy. When she reached the porch, he was already there, wiping his hands on a towel after fixing something by the door. He smiled when he saw her. "You're becoming a regular visitor," he said playfully. Emily grinned. "Well, someone has to make sure you eat something besides takeout." He chuckled, taking the basket. "Muffins again." "You're spoiling me," she shrugged. "Maybe I just like baking." "Or maybe you like sharing them here," he said with a teasing smile. She laughed, a little flustered. "Maybe both." They sat outside on the porch with their mugs of coffee, watching leaves drift across the yard. The silence between them wasn't awkward anymore. It felt comfortable, like an old song that didn't need words. After a while, Emily asked softly, "Do you ever get lonely here?" He took a moment before answering. "Sometimes," he said honestly. "It's quiet. Claire's busy, and life moves faster for everyone else now. But I've learned to appreciate the quiet." Emily nodded, staring at the trees. "I think quiet can be both peaceful and sad at the same time." He looked at her thoughtfully. "You're right. That's why it helps when someone visits." Something in his tone made her chest tighten. She wanted to say something honest, but the words stayed stuck in her throat. They talked for hours that day, about small things and deep things, about life and what it means to start over. She told him about her dreams of writing one day. He told her how he still kept his wife's old guitar even though he hadn't played it in years. It was a simple, gentle connection to people filling the quiet with kindness. As the weeks went on, their talks became a quiet ritual. Sometimes Emily dropped by after work, sometimes on weekends. They'd sit on the porch, share coffee, and talk about everything and nothing. There was never anything romantic or inappropriate, just warmth, mutual care, and something unspoken that hung softly between them. One chilly evening, the power went out during a storm. Emily, who lived nearby, called to check if he was okay. He told her he was fine, but joked that he might freeze without coffee. Without thinking much, she put on her coat and walked over with a thermos. When she arrived, he met her at the door with a flashlight and that familiar smile. "You really didn't have to walk in the rain," he said, shaking his head. "I couldn't let you sit here in the dark alone," she replied. "Besides, I brought coffee." They sat by candlelight in the living room, the soft glow making everything feel calm. Rain tapped against the windows, and for a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the quiet rhythm of the storm. Mr. Anderson finally broke the silence. "You know," he said softly, "ever since you started coming around, this house hasn't felt so empty." Emily looked up, caught off guard. His voice wasn't heavy with sadness. It was full of warmth. I'm glad, she said quietly. I like being here, smiled, eyes gentle. You've brought life back into this place. Her heart fluttered at his words, not because they were romantic, but because they were sincere. She realized then that their bond wasn't built on attraction, it was built on healing. To people different in age and experience, finding comfort in simple companionship. When the lights flickered back on, Emily stood to leave. Guess the power heard us talking, she joked, trying to lighten the moment. He walked her to the door and said, Thank you, Emily, for everything, the visits, the muffins, the kindness. It's meant more than you know. She smiled softly. You don't have to thank me. You've been there for me too. He looked at her for a long moment, as if wanting to say more, but then just nodded. Drive safe. That night, Emily lay awake thinking about his words. She had never planned for any of this. Not the awkward morning, not the quiet friendship that followed, not the strange warmth she felt whenever she was near him. She knew there was no future beyond what they already shared, and she didn't want to ruin it. It was enough to simply care deeply, quietly, respectfully, as the days went by. Emily noticed that something had changed in him too. He smiled more often now, laughed more freely. Even the house seemed brighter, filled with small signs of life, a new plant by the window, music playing again. His late wife's guitar now resting in the living room instead of the attic. One Saturday, he surprised her by saying, I started playing again. She looked up, smiling. The guitar? He nodded. You made me realize I shouldn't hide it away. Music was always her joy, and now it brings me peace. That's beautiful, Emily said softly. He looked at her with quiet gratitude. You have a kind heart, Emily. You remind me that life can start again even after loss. Her eyes warmed. And you remind me that patience can heal things you don't even know are broken. They both laughed. The moment gentle and full dot, when spring finally arrived. Their friendship remained calm, steady, and unspokenly special. Claire returned home more often, and Emily naturally visited less. Life found its balance again. But every now and then, Emily would drive past the Anderson house and smile, knowing a piece of her heart would always belong to that quiet porch, that golden autumn. And the man who taught her that healing doesn't always come from love. Sometimes it comes from understanding. On her last visit before moving to a new city for her new job, she stopped by to say goodbye. Mr. Anderson met her at the door with a warm smile. So this is really it? He said. For now, she replied. But I'll visit. You still owe me a coffee. He laughed. Deal. Then his tone softened. I'm proud of you, Emily. You're going to do great things. Thank you, she said, her voice low but full. For everything. He nodded. Take care of yourself. As she walked away, the wind carried the faint sound of his guitar playing again, soft, full of life. She turned once, saw him wave, and smiled through the tears that filled her eyes. Emily didn't know what their bond truly was, friendship, fate, or something in between. But she knew it was real. It had taught her that hearts can meet in quiet ways. Without promises or expectations, sometimes, the people who come into our lives unexpectedly are the ones who remind us what it means to feel again. And for Emily, walking in that day by pure accident had led her not into a mistake, but into a moment that changed her forever. This story version is emotional, romantic in tone, but clean, fast-paced, and fully compliant with YouTube monetization policies. No explicit content, no violence, and no harmful material. It ends with emotional closure and warmth, suitable for storytelling audiences in the US and Canada.